Hello, everyone. My name is Mark Olsen. I'm a writer for the Los Angeles Times. Welcome today to Chase Sapphire on Main for our presentation today on the movie Worth. Here with me, I have the director of the film, Sara Colangelo. We have two of the sort of the real-life subjects of the film, Kenneth Feinberg and Camille Biros. And from the performers from the film, we have Stanley Tucci, Amy Ryan, Laura Benanti, and Tate Donovan. Let's welcome everybody here. So, Sara, the movie has its world premiere tonight. So maybe to kind of just get people started, can you describe the movie, like the kind of the story of what the movie's about?
Sure. My mic working? Yeah. Well, it's about the 9/11 Victim Compensation Fund, which was a fund that was created in the aftermath of 9/11 to compensate victims and victims' families. And it was really the only fund of its kind in United States history. It gave $7 billion to 5,300 people. And it's really about, the emotional journey of Ken and Camille. I think what attracted me to the beautiful script and to the project was that there is a sort of, on the surface, a dryness to computing these numbers and monetizing lives. It almost seems bizarre and dare I say, vulgar or something. But they've been, we've been doing this, whether it's insurance companies or in other facets, we've been doing this. But there's something to that dryness kind of colliding with the heartbreak of 9/11 and the incredible emotional kind of the reeling of families. And I was really interested in that tension and that sort of collision.
Kenneth, Camille, what has it been like for the two of you to see this very remarkable chapter from your lives turned into a movie?
It's a very surreal experience, I must say. When I wrote the book, which was a memoir about 9/11, the fund, I was dubious that a movie could really bring to life the harrowing emotional experience of a 33-month journey calculating dollars for human beings. I was astounded myself at the result, thanks to Sara and the actors, how the movie does really depict the emotional pathos of dealing with individuals who have had their lives destroyed and next of kin. And I must say, it is quite an experience for me personally to see just how incredible the movie depicts that emotion.
Camille?
One thing to keep in mind is that the fund was implemented in November of that year, and it was so soon after the horror that it was very, very difficult. The emotions were so incredibly raw, and then to have us come along with this fund that we're trying to implement and bring people in, it was very difficult.
I know, Amy, you played Camille in the movie. What is that like as an actor? Are you talking to her? Are you getting information from her? How do you sort of go about creating a performance from an actual person?
Ken and Camille were so generous with their time. So we got to meet before filming started. We shared a few emails. I always work from a script, and the script was so rich. And I just wanted to make sure I wasn't stepping on going against any of Camille's beliefs. I remember asking you if you go to church, or just asking you trying to get behind what was the emotion for her that day, and what was your did you have a mask? How much did you share with the victims' families? Which they both said, it was always quite. You were able to keep it in, which was the hard thing for me to do, even recreated with other actors. This raw emotion. I mean, how they survived all those meetings with the victims' families, I don't know. But they're incredible that they were brave enough in those early days to take this on. And so I was very inspired by that.
And Stanley, you played Charles Wolfe, a man who lost his wife in 9/11, and that he at first is a very harsh critic of the fund and ultimately becomes a supporter of the fund. Did you have a chance to meet with Charles, or did?
No, I didn't. I didn't meet with him. No, I guess I made the decision not to. Sometimes it depends. Sometimes the character I played in Spotlight, Mitchell Garabedian, I did not meet with him either. Although we met at the premiere, and then consequently we had emails and talked and stuff like that. But sometimes I find sometimes it can make you overthink things too much, and sometimes it's better, for me anyway, to just go from what's there on the page, and then whatever Sarah would like me to do. You know, I always say no, but no, but then it just becomes a collaboration, because sometimes. It may sound funny, but sometimes you can almost have too much information and can sort of cloud the kind of purity of what the message you need to get across.
I know, Laura, the two of you play fictional or more composite characters in the movie. Is that a challenge, like to sort of like weave that into the fabric of this story that has a lot of very real elements to it?
Well, I spoke to a lot of fictional people, and I found their experience. No, actually, I have an uncle who is a corporate lawyer in New York, and actually slightly worked a few days on the 9/11 compensation fund. And I called him up before I filmed, and I was like, hey, I'm doing this film, and it's about the compensation fund, and I was just curious what your experience was. What was that like? And he said, is it about Ken Feinberg? And I'm like, yeah, it is. And he goes, well, I hope Hollywood doesn't fuck it up. Because Ken Feinberg is a hero. He is one of the great men I've ever come across. He's just like the biggest fan of Ken. I'm like, take it easy. It's, he wrote it, okay? It's about his book. It's gonna be great. And so I sent him the script. I wasn't supposed to. You're supposed to. I'm just admitting this now. But and he, it was really interesting. He didn't get back to me for the longest time. And I shot my stuff, and about a month later I emailed him, and I'm like, hey, Uncle Mike, what's going on? Did you read the script? And he goes, I tried to read the script 3 or 4 times, and I just found myself getting overwhelmed with emotion. It was just too much. I couldn't. I'm like, well, are you going to see the movie? And he goes, I don't know. But Hollywood didn't fuck it up.
I didn't read the script either. So that's what I did. No, I mean, I play a composite of multiple people, but it's based on it's based on truth. She's, I don't want to give anything away, but she's a widow. And I was born in New York, I was raised in New Jersey. I know a lot of those women and what they went through. So it's interesting, when I first got the job, I was like, oh, how am I going to be able to bring up all of this emotion all the time? And actually, it was the opposite, where I felt like I had to rein myself in, because it really is. I think if you are a New Yorker and you were there, which I was, and many of us were, it's almost in your cells somewhere. It like became a part of our DNA, like a ring in a tree, and it just sort of lived there. And then all of a sudden, we were filming, and it was difficult to not be overwhelmed by it. But I think you're going to see that authenticity in the film. And something we've all been talking about is we live in such divisive times right now, and to see a film in which people came together, red and blue, liberal, Democrat, to try and actually do the right thing, it feels really aspirational and a great thing to be a part of, especially right now.
Sarah, can you talk about just dealing with the sort of the 9/11 aspect of the story? I mean, that is still one of the most sort of sensitive sort of events of our times, and yet it is, with every year, getting further and further into history. And I mean, as I was watching the film, I just was so shocked by thinking about 2001, 2002, 2003, how far in the past those events seem now. How did you, as a filmmaker, sort of make those events feel current and vibrant? And did you even have to kind of figure out how to balance, how much news footage to feel, how much you needed to like prompt the audience of what those events even were?
Right, because you certainly don't want to fetishize the tragedy, and so I was really thinking about that a lot. And but you're right. I mean, it's been 20 years, or close to 20 years at this point, and I'm not sure I could have worked on a film like this 10 years ago. I wouldn't have been, well, certainly wouldn't have been ready as a filmmaker. But I'm not sure the public could have watched something like this and really understood it. I think it takes some time to look at these events, and we need that perspective. But I think, you're right. How do you keep it vibrant? How do you... I think one of the best things about the project, one of those interesting things, is that it's a subject matter that we don't really hear a lot about. It's sort of a niche topic within the larger umbrella of 9/11. And it's sort of a very specific job and task that you both did that a lot of people don't know about. So I think it kind of is a new, a new and interesting subject matter that a lot of people won't know much about. But I certainly didn't want to kind of show the unfolding of 9/11 in the typical way. We know the history. We know the pain of that. There is a little bit of that, and sort of, Ken kind of living through that moment. We all remember where we were on that day. So it has a little bit of that, but I try not to sit there, in the sort of tragedy of that day. It's sort of the film takes place over the course of 3 years, and we talk. I think the film is about that too. What happens over time, both for Ken and Camille doing the job, but also for characters like Karen, Laura's character. What is that mourning process like? What is she like when she first walks in November 2001? What is she like in 2003? So that was something that we worked on a lot. I think
Because Ken, can you talk a little bit about that? I mean, so much of the drama of the movie has to do with your character, played by Michael Keaton in the movie, going through a transformation, essentially, of going from thinking of this as kind of an actuarial table of the statistics of the work you were doing, to seeing every case as individual, every person really as a person. It's a beautiful thing to see that character go through. And can you talk a little bit about what that process was like for you? Was that like a process you feel that you yourself went through in the process of working on the fund?
I think so. The 9/11 fund was unique. It'll never be replicated, never. It was a one-off federal law in response to a great American tragedy. And you have to get your bearings. This law comes along and you're asked by the Attorney General of the United States, you do it. And I said, I'll do it for free. I don't want to get paid for this. This is a patriotic thing to do. And you evolve, you see, you have to be flexible. As you move along, you begin to realize, you can't just use a calculator. It won't work. People are injured and they're psychically impacted. And you better find a way, and Camille was incredible this way, and the film shows it. You better find a way to be empathetic. Also, I must say, my wife, Dee Dee Feinberg, is standing right over there. She's in the film also. And Dee Dee Feinberg was a tremendous help. At night, you go home and you explain what's going on, and it certainly helps to have a loving partner, and she was there. And every day, Camille and I, joined at the hip, would discuss these individual cases when people came to see us privately. And the film is so effective in showing that gradual evolution and transformation from being a lawyer, a friend with your uncle or whatever, from being a lawyer to becoming more of a priest or a rabbi, and exhibiting that type of empathy that encouraged people to participate in the fund voluntarily.
Camille, can you talk a bit about those testimonies, about hearing from survivors, from victims' families, what that experience was like for you to go through?
Yeah, it was just when you think you heard the worst possible story, then the next hearing or the next meeting was just, it just blew your mind. But I just want to say there were two really important issues for me, and I believe for Ken, that we were able to bring to fruition. And one is we tracked down and identified 11 undocumented workers, the families of 11 undocumented workers who were killed in the World Trade Center. It took us almost 3 years to find them. And they were petrified. We said, you're eligible, come into the fund. They were petrified because they thought they would be deported. But after we tracked them down, we worked with the INS and got absolute comfort level and agreement that they would not be deported. So we were able to bring them in and pay them money just as if they were American citizens. The other thing we were able to do was, this was almost 20 years ago, so same-sex marriage really wasn't as prevalent as it is and as legal in various states as it is, but we were able to figure out a way to pay same-sex partners of the victims in 9/11. And we're really, really proud of the fact that we did that. So,
And Sarah, just as a point of filmmaking, there are these sort of testimonies that you see throughout the movie, and just so you have to cast actors to come in for basically one scene. The mighty Gail Rankin in particular has like a scene that's just phenomenal. Was it a challenge to have to fill all those roles with character? You're trying to find actors to come in to do 2-3 minutes of screen time.
Well, it was really interesting because a lot of people had read the script and wanted to do these kind of little roles. And Gail's is actually a mighty story within that little role. But it was also quite amazing because every actor that auditioned had their own story about 9/11, and probably could have told a true story, a true story right there. But what we did is we also opened it up. A few people, just real life people who had lost a loved one, had a SAG card, and we let them just riff. And I was really interested in seeing what that would be like without sort of writing it out, myself. So that was beautiful. If, about 3 or 4 people did that, and they're in the film. And I that was one of my favorite parts. I think this film has to be about, beyond just Ken and Camille, these people, the survivors. It's very much for me a story about surviving 9/11 and what happens when, the towers have collapsed and people are lost. These family members are left there, and these and the injured are left, and they're alive, and what's that like? So, to me, that's the crux of the movie.
And Stanley, there are 2 scenes in the movie. There's one that's in an office and then one at the opera where it's really just you and Michael Keaton. And those scenes are just such a pleasure to watch, the 2 of you together. What is it like for you to have a scene like that where it's just 2 actors really just sort of just do their thing?
That's what you live for as an actor. I mean, that's what you want. When you read a script and it's as well written as this one, and then you see those nice sort of juicy, complex scenes. It's a kind of a dream come true. It doesn't always happen.
And Amy, what was it like for you in a lot of these scenes of the testimonies you're involved in and you're hearing them? What was it like for you to sort of be on the other side of those scenes, to be taking in so much of what you're hearing in those scenes?
Oh, it was very difficult, because like Sara said, we had the most extraordinary group of actors come in, knock it out of the park, and these very emotional scenes, and what Camille and I had spoken about, and Sara too. Like it was important for them not to kind of choke up and tear up along with them, to keep this professional mask, and it was hard, even knowing that we are recreating something under make-believe circumstances here in this room with actors and cameras and lights. But I had to work hard at repressing that emotion because I love a good cry myself. So it was difficult, but it was just. I was so blown away by those actors. They were incredible.
And Jake, can you talk a little bit more about your character? In some ways, he kind of comes to represent sort of like the stagnation of bureaucracy in the way in which, like, something as sort of dynamic as the fund there's so many things to stop something like that. And what was it like for you to sort of play this guy who in some ways like often comes into the movie as like the heavy, like he's the guy who kind of says like, well, I don't know if this is really going to work out.
I just sort of play. I mean, he had a really great point. He has excellent points. I mean, he's right. Certainly, if you want to look at it a certain way, trying to decide what a life is worth is super complicated, complex calculation, and he was just fighting for his clients, which every lawyer needs to do. So I just always approached. It was just awesome to work with Michael Keaton too. I just adored it. So, and Sara was. I have to say, Stanley and I were talking about just what an incredible atmosphere you created around the set. It was so calm and fun and supportive, and everyone was doing such excellent work. Like, I mean, the grips, everybody on set was just like on point and knew they were involved in something great. It was awesome.
It's very easy to work with this crowd. Their instincts are incredible, and I just stay out of their way. So.
And Laura, for you in particular, like you're mostly known for your stage work. You haven't done a lot of film work yet. Is that a difficult transition to make, especially with something like this, where your role is so emotional, often is so interior? I would imagine as a stage performer, is it difficult to kind of rein that in for the camera? Like, are you conscious of those sort of transitions?
I've done a lot of television, so I wasn't like, what's a camera? So no. But yeah, I mean, it's a different energy, right? Because when you're on stage, your energy has to reach the back of the house, and so you reflect it in that way. In a way, you're coming to them. And one of the things that I worked on over the course of my career and working in television is really you're bringing people to you. And for me, the thing I know is that the camera is an excellent lie detector. If you're on stage and it's the 8th show of the week and you're really tired and you're not really crying, who's gonna know? Because you're shaking your shoulders. You know what I'm saying? But if a camera's there, it's gonna be like,
You were faking it that way?
oh yeah, no. Every
Are you
time you see me
serious?
on stage, I am absolutely phoning it in.
Oh my God.
But yeah, I mean, sure. I think being an actor is being an actor, and you're there to bring your own specific set of circumstances to this other person, and so that's my answer.
But I think what was kind of interesting with your role, I think too, is that there's so much emotion in what's happening. I think with your character in particular, that we didn't do too many takes either, because, well, first of all, you do such a great, we didn't have to, but
Mostly,
but you
I
couldn't
didn't need them.
But
That's
you,
what I think
you
Sarah's
could kill
saying.
it by repeating it so many times.
Yeah.
You had to keep it fresh.
No, we
in
did,
that
and we didn't
case.
really rehearse very much.
Yeah,
And
it's like I never wanted to get to a third take with you because
Yes.
you wanted to keep it very alive and very spontaneous.
yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
I think also the question that you ask is it's a bit of a myth, this idea
Yes.
that there are stage actors and film actors. I can there to a certain extent, yes, but really ultimately they're only good actors, and I think that particularly nowadays the crossover is so great that and theater has changed distinctly from when people were sort of purely theater actors, and is much less presentational now in so many ways, that I think that is something that maybe used to exist a long time ago, but I don't see it as much anymore. To me, you're either good or you either can act or you can't act. I think so.
Agreed.
I mean, we know you can't.
No, I'm very bad. I'm very bad. Do not see me in anything except this movie.
And now, Sarah, you mentioned at the beginning that this is a subject matter that in a way could come off as very dry, and yet, I mean, one of the wondrous things about the movie is that it finds the emotion in this story. And was that something that was apparent from the book or from the screenplay, or how did you sort of work to like really bring out the emotion in this story that could, in some ways is about numbers?
Well, it's in the DNA of the story, I think, and it's in the DNA of the memoir. And that, I think, Ken, if I'm correct, I mean, you kind of came to it thinking this will be easy. I mean, I've done cases like this before. He had done, you know, you had both done Asbestos and Agent Orange, and but this was a little bit different. It was so raw because it was happening so quickly thereafter, you know, so I think that was inherent in the story. That drama was there, and I think it was just a matter of kind of bringing it out and you know, and trying to show this transformation from sort of okay, I can do this in a very formulaic way and kind of a cynicism, so to speak, to an open-heartedness at the end, and so that's what kind of kept me inspired every day, and I think it was, you know, I think it's very much part of your memoir.
I will say this. The movie can be viewed, of course, as a very tragic chapter in American history with all of this horror on 9/11. The movie itself I find to be extremely uplifting because, and I think this was mentioned a little bit earlier, when you see this movie and you realize there are no Republicans and Democrats, there are no blue states and red states, there are no liberals and conservatives. The country as a whole, it's nostalgic really, it rallied around the victims. And this fund, Camille and I implemented this fund knowing that the Bush administration, Senator Kennedy, Republicans and Democrats, governors, Congress, everybody circled the wagons and supported us. And that comes through in the film as, I think, a nostalgic look back to the way the country used to be, and it can still be again. And I think that's a very important, uplifting message of the movie.
And Camille, before we wrap up, could you just talk about the work that you and Ken have continued to do? That, like, you've been involved in I mean, sadly, similar projects since the 9/11 Fund.
So currently, we're handling child sexual abuse cases for 23 different Catholic dioceses across the country. So that's debilitating work. We've been doing that for 3 years, and that's just remarkable. We have distributed the fund for the Boston Marathon victims. We've distributed the fund for the Pulse nightclub victims, Virginia Tech. What am I leaving out? And we're currently distributing flat fee amounts to all the victims of the 2 Boeing air crashes. So that's what's been keeping us busy for the past several years.
Well, it's amazing work that the two of you do, and I want to thank all of you for being here today to talk about the movie Worth. Let's give everybody a round of applause. Thanks so much.